Everyone I know listens to podcasts. Anyone who's anyone has their own podcast. You could start your own show even if no one asks. It's easy to record yourself and act like an ass. Murder, sports and politics, history and movies, heist or technology. There's an audience for everything. Yes, but who on earth will listen to three random Vatos reading books?
What? Where's Art?
Wait, he's right there. Isn't he right there? Art.
I don't.
What the hell, Robert? We've been
Damn.
best friends for years, Waffle.
I haven't heard. Like you just didn't. Where did this dude just did this?
Because he was hiding in the darkness.
No, I have the thing where the
Isn't
screen.
my fucking light, dude? Is that what you're saying?
No, it just does the thing where the screen shows one person at a time.
Damn it, my light does look bad though, right?
No, dude, you're a mysterious pimp,
Yeah, dude, like you're in the dark alleyways.
dude. Actually, that's a good photo op for you right there.
Change this to your Tinder, man.
Ye motherfucking ha.
Right, Waffle. I think you guys are just not dealing with my light situation. It's a real situation. All right, I'm good though.
Three random Vatos reading books. And today we've begun Pimp.
Oh, we started. Well,
Oh, we're back. All
And
right.
if you thought a math author hated women, check out this guy.
I know. Yes. Had we announced that we were gonna do this book on the
yeah.
last? We did, right?
We hyped it up.
Okay, yeah. Hey, so we're doing that one. Iceberg Slim. Yeah, Marcus, take it away. I guess this was your pick, right? So
Tell us why you won.
Pimp, believe it or not, it's a story about a pimp. Autobiographical. Written by this cool cat, Iceberg Slim. And I like the way he like starts it off too, where he's like talking about, or like there's like the preface. And then he kind of already tells you, because he wants you to know from like the jump, that this is not like role model type shit, you know, like it gets gritty and there's mistakes made, and I guess that, you know, it's not a commendable life. And so I like that he started off with that, you know, because I guess I would worry that like people reading it would think that it's like almost like glorifying it. Like
Yeah.
As we're like in costume.
although we do that.
yeah, so why don't you tell us what's the setting, right? So like that, I think that's what's really important and interesting about
Yeah,
this,
well,
right?
did it start like in the 40s?
So they're actually in the 30s. Well, his life starts earlier than that, like in the 20s.
Does it say when he was born?
But I know he starts in the 30s. So like he starts pimping in the 30s. But
Yeah, and
but
he's
that's
like
important, right? Because like that's
19
like
or something. Yeah.
throughout this whole thing, he's given like a history of, he's like contextualizing his life, of course, which is just interesting for a pimp to do, right? Like that's the appeal of this book, I think, is like, it's like, well, what the hell is that life like? And so you hope for good writing. Man, there's just so much to say. I guess I'm all over the place too, right? Why don't I start with the same thing? I'll appreciate the same thing you did, which was the foreword to this book just blew me away, because it just immediately puts you in how like brutal a situation that world is when so the opening scene is him he's dealing with a newer, apparently prettier white prostitute, and she's like threatening to leave his like stable, right? And he's talking to us, the audience, about like what that process is like. And he's just saying like he has to be so cold to this girl who at one point confesses her love to him. Like I didn't know that was the relationship dynamics between most of these things. Yeah. I don't know if that is representative of most relationships, but I just honestly was like ignorant about that. Like I didn't know that prostitutes are generally have some like weird like love dynamic situation or like romantic dynamic, right? But he just is totally cold to her, right? And says like, there's a lot of cursing in this book, obviously, right? This is from his point of view. So he's like, bitch, I'll like take you back to the train station. Like, I don't care, right? So immediately you're just like, holy shit, this is going to be a crazy book. And then the preface of the book, which follows that like crazy just opening scene, putting you right in there. He's like, I don't agree with any of what I did. Like, this is going to be a lesson for, he says, like, he even says in that preface, perhaps one day I can win respect as a constructive human being.
Yeah.
So immediately you know that there's just been like a crazy like journey that this guy has had.
He's like begging for forgiveness at that point, like I guess like as he's looking back at it, you imagine him like putting it in after he's already written the book, just like to let people know.
There's obviously been some growth. You can see just the character and the personality of him in that first forward to like even acknowledging that behavior was like bad in any way, but obviously he's had the thoughtfulness to apparently like want to write this book. And so it's interesting.
Well,
like, so
I feel like it gave him I felt like it gave him a freedom just to speak more honestly instead of like, he's not living in it anymore. It was more of just a retrospective. So that just kind of, nothing was filtered, but in a sense, it's kind of like, I'm not that guy anymore. So I can really just say I hit a few, or two. It was just like, oh shit.
Man, I also love how, we're also going to be doing the first 6 chapters. And I love how reading chapter 1, it almost felt like a superhero origin story, but like a total rotten, nasty, grimy version of it, where like the opening scene is him getting raped, like face raped, by his babysitter, like a person that's
how old was he?
3 years old.
He was 3. His first memory of that, was eating her out. Like he like that was his first memory of his mom telling him like what had happened. And like just the idea that you can even have that memory, and he describes it the way you imagine you would at 3 years old, where you don't know what's going on. It's the craziest stuff. Like he takes you in there like immediately just to show like how fucked up his life was from just the get-go.
And it kind of shows you.
Sorry, I think I interrupted you, Marcus.
I mean, it's just more, like the shock of it all. Like nothing is pretty about this life, and like how he ended up there, and like just what sacrifices and what pain, and I don't know. There's a lot. And so, what else happens in chapter 1?
They talk about his mom. How a lot of it is. A lot of what he gets into is just the lack of, or just not the lack of, but I guess like what he's influenced by, and just seeing all these male figures come in and out of her mom's life, and how her mom treats them and how they treat her, and just seeing how Henry, right, the one who had loved her, left him, and it was just, he just kind of saw everything was kind of messed up or fucked up from a very early age. Like things weren't fair, things just kind of, I don't know, just kind of just corrupted his mind at a young age. Kind of, he didn't want to be that person to grow up to be the abusive, partner that his mother had, and that ended up being exactly what he turned into.
But and then we also we meet his let me see here. Oh wait, we should talk about where it's at, right? Like the setting of the whole thing. He's in Chicago, right? In this opening section.
They go back and forth between, I think, Milwaukee and Chicago, right? But it's mainly in Chicago. And
so he's in this community, like a Black community, like the poorer side of town and everything. And he starts recognizing at a young age that the only people who look nice and dress nice and have nice things are, how does he describe them? I'm looking through my notes here. Oh,
wait, who are you talking about?
Like just like the people around him, like the ones that like actually like are able to afford nice things and live a nice lifestyle.
He's a talented writer for sure. That's one thing that like you just I went into this book not knowing what to expect, right? And thinking story about a pimp, like I don't know that it's going to be good writing, first of all. I don't know whether the story is going to be interesting. That's already been proven. Like immediately I understood like, okay, this is actually going to be a very interesting story. But then like he proves throughout the book that he's a gifted writer. Like he's able to just like describe these like early memories and scenes in his life super vividly. Because I say that, but I don't remember how he described that one part, Marcus. But I remember thinking also like, man, like what a unique way to like it. He paints the picture as it was presented to him as through his like kid's eyes, right?
Yeah. Man, did you have like favorite sections of writing? Because I had a few, but I don't know if I wrote them down.
I didn't write any quotes. I'm actually going through my notes here and seeing that I didn't actually quote anything, which I feel like I should have, because I found a lot of it very interesting.
Yeah.
But
repeat.
Huh?
A lot of them can't really repeat per se, I guess, in the full quote. But
yeah.
I have another Lost reference though. It's bringing it back.
What is it?
All right, dude. The whole con man thing with his mom's, one of his mom's guys. I forgot his name. There were like 3 of them, but the guy pretended to be her cousin, and he got back with the old freaking. I mean, he was a con man, right? Like he was like, let's steal all his shit. Let's steal all your husband's shit. And she was like, all right, woo! He turns out to be like a terrible guy, right? Obviously, like big surprise. And then Pimp grows up to be Sawyer, right? Like, you know what I mean? Just like Lost reference.
That was a roundabout way to go about it, but yes.
I didn't take notes either, dude. I'm like, I know that was probably 2 or 3 already.
Should I briefly outline the journey that the mom had? Because I think it's like very relevant to like what he ends up growing to do. So it's all this happens in the 1920s, right? So that's just like a weird, like, or an interesting moment in American history, right? There, I believe, in Chicago, and his dad and his mom were together, and his dad was a chef at like some hotel, right, at a restaurant's hotel, and it was kind of like a big deal. He got a job as like the top chef there, and and because of his position, he was able to get his mom a job as a waitress, right? And what ends up happening at one point is the mom finds the dad cheating at the restaurant, like in the closet or something, with another white employee there.
Yeah.
And that's just interesting, right? So there's already just like, like sex is going to play a big role here, I guess, right? Like the almost eagerness for sex, or like the psychology of it, So basically the mom catches him. The dad says like, I fucked up. Please take me back. And she does. And they stay together for a while. And then as soon as he's born, he leaves the mom, right? And then so she ends up being a single mom. And then out of nowhere, so they're like fucking poor, and she's like going door to door to like sell. She does hair, right? That's what she does.
Yeah.
And so she's straight up like, what's that movie with Will Smith? Pursuit of Happiness. Like, like on her, like just like no luck whatsoever. Like that's completely destitute. That's what she's doing. And then out of nowhere, this savior man comes into their lives and falls in love with the mom and him, basically, right? And he's this like good, like church going man who has his own print shop. And that's like his only sliver that he can remember of happiness, of true happiness.
Yeah.
Where he remembers that he actually felt like the comfort of a family and just like normal, what you would want human relationships to look like. And then, and the guy just like is playing the best dad and helps the mom by helping her open up her own salon. Right. And they're just like this like perfect little family. But he knows this whole time, he's like, I knew mom didn't love him. Like she just like wasn't into him like that. And he knew that. And he always knew that. And it's just interesting that he, like a kid would know that, right? And like notice that. But what ends up happening is there's a pimp in the community who brings his prostitutes into, or I guess the prostitutes themselves, I don't know. They just go into the hairdresser and get like their hair done by that mom. And that pimp ends up just like hitting it off with the mom. And so the mom cheats on her husband, not only cheats on her husband, but just like completely like leaves him and leaves that life because she was like getting fucked by this guy who just like convinced her to leave them for him.
That was the heartbreaking part, I guess, that whole time where he has that moment with Henry and he's just crying saying, "You love me, right? You guys would never leave me, right?" And then they just hold each other. And, you know, the mom even lies to him. It's like, you know, don't cry. We'll be right back. And like, they never come back. Yeah. And it's just, he dies, what, like a year later or something? Like he dies soon thereafter. And it's just like so heartbreaking. It's
he's just a dude who literally got fucked over. And like, he was the good guy, right? Like, at least according to his eyes, right? His child eyes.
Yeah.
But it's probably true, you know?
The only like father figure type. And his
and so he's just reminiscing on that and just reflecting on what his life could have been had his mom just not done that and like robbed him.
A deep thing to think about, right? That how like one choice that somebody makes, not even your own choice, can like just mess up the whole what's the word I'm looking for? Of your life.
The arc of your life.
Close. I think we'll go with arc.
Okay. I know what you're saying, but he's reflecting on just that, and it's and he holds it against his mom for the rest of his life.
And I mean,
until she dies, he says.
Yeah.
He was like, it wasn't until she died that
Yeah, and then so the guy that she replaces him with is kind of a jerk. He kills young Bobby's cat and everything. That was so hard to read, you know.
Yeah, Robert, I'm sorry. I meant to connect that to your comment. We like back to that guy. Like that's who they're with, right? And so what they do is when she leaves with that guy, what they do is they reconnect with the initial husband who had left them once he was born, who was the chef.
Yeah, the loser.
And he ends up being like, he's doing good for and so they con him. Steve is the guy the pimp that the mom leaves Henry for.
Yeah.
Right. And so they get together and they're like, hey, get a hold of your ex-husband, say I'm your cousin, say you're back in town, and say you want to get back together with him or whatever. And that's exactly what happens. They meet and he's like, I'm a changed man. I've grown and like, I really want to do right by you guys. And again, like, it's almost like there's another second chance for just like a normal, decent life for Slim. But what do? What's the con?
They pretty much take everything that he owns and
they just move to another place. And then this loser loses it all on craps.
And then obviously it's an abusive relationship, no doubt about it. Who saw that coming? All of us. So then the mom's like, hey, Slim, let's get the fuck out. So at night they like try to escape while they grab everything they want. And then I don't know if it happens directly after, but he tells a story of how pretty much stalks the mom at some point, right? At one point. Is it a birthday of his?
It's Iceberg Slim's birthday, young Bobby.
It's Iceberg Slim's birthday, and he pretty much tracks down the mother, stalks her, and beats the crap out of her.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of revenge talk in this book too. Like mom had the revenge on the original husband by stealing all of it, and it's
like a lot of resentment just builds up, when everybody's going around doing evil shit to each other.
It's hard for me just like to think about the politics of everything or like the system of it. It's just sad because that you get the sense that he's a smart guy, and if he had that life with Henry or any other number of circumstances that would have led to like a normal life, like he probably would have been an upstanding citizen, contributing member of society. Or
he could have just ended up in jail, like that's the shit those communities have to deal with, I think.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. It's like you're everyone's a victim of their circumstance. It's And it just sucks that there are these circumstances that exist where, I mean,
Yeah.
like,
I guess chapter 1 overall just paints the picture that the odds were stacked against him from the very start. Like
yeah, it's like how fucked up can your life be to lead to a life of being a pimp? And it's just like, oh, okay, that would qualify, you know?
Yeah. And then
Like
so what happens in chapter 2?
that long, or past being a teenager, just going through all of that, or just having that fear of getting jumped and killed. But yeah.
And another thing I thought too was like, this is like early 20th century. There's not a lot of info on mental health. Like that's still stigmatized right now, like that's only becoming something that we're becoming more open about, just the idea that people can deal with like emotional issues that affect their day-to-day circumstances. And it's just like, man, like all these people had such fucked up lives and they didn't even have the outlet to like go to a therapist or like have healthcare to go treat the fact that you have like this resentment built up in you from your mom, leaving what you knew as a kid was a perfect life, and like you just got to deal with it. What a weird thing.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. And sorry, I guess we're taking a little too long with that first chapter, but I feel like a lot of these chapters are just like, all these were really interesting.
There's a lot.
It seemed pivotal moments too, right? But I guess
I mean, that's pretty much what he was saying too, is like there's so much to tell that he can't really get too deep into anything. Like, but obviously it's a very full life that he's lived. So he talks about his friend Party Time, and then he talks about his friend Murphy, this guy the Blimp. What did they do that all leads to their arrest?
I was just thinking that. Well, I know I was reading this right. Party Time hired him to dress up as a woman to bait these guys into paying him.
Oh yeah, they start playing their game. That's like their little con that they do.
Yeah, but that's not how he got caught. I know Party Time got the shit kicked out of him and got arrested, but he didn't give him because that's the code. They don't rat on each other on the pimp game. Shit, what happens?
So would it be too much detail to go back and talk to the moment he wanted to become like Party Time, like what it was that made him want to be Party Time? And I think that
it was just because like whenever he got paid that he would want to, he would be like, it's party time, and then go use a bunch of drugs.
Well, he knew him for being that person, right? Like that's why he had his name. But basically what happens is he walks in on him somehow, or like he's able to peep through like a window or something.
Oh yeah, that's like the first guy he meets like in the business, right?
In the business. So what it is, it's like a cuckold situation where Party Time, a black dude who's like been in and out of prison at least once, he sees,
I think 4 times at this point.
Yeah. And so Slim's like peeping through a window and he's like, what the hell? And he sees Party Time having sex with a white woman and like denigrating her, right? Just like having like kinky sex with her in front of a white husband, right? So it's like this like hypersexual thing. Like, I mean, just imagine then, like you like, you don't have access to like porn or just like the intense like sexual culture we have now. And so that to me just seems like it would have affected your psychology if he's this guy who's like fucked up already. Huh?
How old is he? Is he like a teenager? He's like 15?
He's a teenager, yeah.
Like 18, 19?
So he's like hormonal too, he's like going through all this fucked up shit already. And then he just like stumbles into this like super hypersexual like scenario that most people would never encounter. And then he's just like, holy shit, I want that. Like I need to follow that guy, whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
That's how he gets into like just the world of like pimping and that sort of thing. And it's just like, it's such a weird thing because it all goes back, and like even to his mom, it's like of course that would have like some weird pull if like he was also aware that his mom was like robbed of that life from like a pimp in like that world of like sex and just like, because he said that about his mom. He was like, she wasn't in love with him. She was just like fucking her good. Right. And it's just like a crazy thing. But yeah. So what ends up happening is he goes to college eventually, and is that where we're at, or am I
Kind
going
of,
too
yeah.
forward?
We left dressing up as a woman for party time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
so
party
that
time is doing his
happened.
con, and then I guess because Iceberg is so young at this point, they call him like New Blood, right? Or
Yeah.
Young Blood. I think they call him Young Blood. He's so young at this time that he can like kind of pass off looking like a woman, and so they start using him to like lure in people. And do they just mug him, or do they? How do they get their money?
I think they just mugged him. Yeah.
They try to go towards him, and he just like runs off with his heels.
At first, I thought like when he was explaining, he was like, I like party time took me under his wing, and he started showing me the ropes, and like we decided to con some people. So like I dressed up as a girl, and he starts outlining it. I'm like, holy shit, is this guy gonna like have sex? Like did party time just like convince him to pretend he's a woman and just like fuck a dude to get money? But no, like it ended up turning out to them just like leaving before the act, right?
Yeah, and then so that's how he gets arrested. Wait, no, or selling moonshine at school.
Yeah, so I don't think he gets arrested from that. He just ends up going to school.
He goes to college. He graduates high school, and he gets this like scholarship to some college.
He's really smart too, right? He had like a 98.4.
They said he said he got a 178, and I'm not super familiar with IQ tests, but if someone got a 178 right now, that's like genius level. I think I don't know how.
He's a great author. Written by, if this isn't like written by a ghost author, I mean, I'm pretty impressed. I believe.
Yeah, he wrote this, man.
Yeah. I did see an interview of him on I forgot what show he went on, but he was an articulate guy. He had a mask over him. He was literally wearing a mask because he didn't want to just like harm his reputation. He was like a changed man.
I think in shit, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay, so he goes to college.
Like, get out and be successful in those types of worlds. Like you have to be pretty smart, I think. You know.
Yeah, dude. Like what I definitely get is like even the drive to want to get good at the various aspects, and we learn through this is like he's thinking as sophisticated as about business as one can from that position, which is like, how do I think about my prostitutes and how do I keep them longer, and how do I make it so that they don't leave me too early, or I'm making sure I'm using them as much as I can in terms of like how well their psychology is, so that they're either going to be with me for an intense amount of time for a short while or like a long time. And it's just weird. He's thinking about all these different things. And what I think is like anyone else who's gone through what he's gone through would just be like a homeless loser or something, not like trying to be the best pimp out there, which he was trying to do.
And then I wrote down that he got his first trick at one point in this chapter. You guys remember that? His first trick,
what is that saying for?
So
like the person that you play the con on, I guess.
Oh,
yeah, let me get from the college thing to there just real quick so that we can connect it. So he goes off to college. He ends up having a lot of sex, and he develops a reputation for being like this like sex guy. And he's just having a lot of sex, and he gets that reputation. And eventually he gets kicked out of school because he starts like a drug ring or something, just trying to make some money. And so he starts getting people to sell. Yes. And they start he starts getting girls to sell for him, and they're busted. And so he ends up getting kicked out. And then shortly after, he meets a girl who he just like develops another sexual relationship with. And then that's the first girl that he tries to get to like have sex for him for money. And he starts that literally in the same day. She gets one customer that first day where they agree to it. And then immediately the second customer that they get turns out to be like a friend of that girl's father. So
And like,
so he calls up the dad.
He's like, don't ask how I'm in this situation, but I have some news for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was hanging out at that and then he gets kicked out, and then he hangs out at the like a gambling den, and then he meets Diamond Tooth Jimmy, I think.
Wait, sent to the confined.
So he goes to prison because of that, and so I think what you're talking about is already after, which we can totally skip to because we have a lot to go, maybe. But.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, prison was like a big part. I thought
prison was a big part, but that's why I'm saying I feel like every part was so pivotal. It seemed.
Yeah.
Hey man, this is actually kind of uncomfortable. How would you guys feel if I take it off?
Okay.
So what we were doing here was being pimps ourselves. This was a last minute idea, and this is not a pimp hat. This is a cowboy hat, Mexican hat. I thought Vatos. This is the closest I had to.
This is my dog's blanket.
Mexican pimp,
by the way. And Marcus just owns those clothes. Right?
And Marcus, happy freaking birthday, dude! This
30.
is my birthday. Happy birthday!
There we go.
I'm sure not the way you expected to celebrate, but at least you're with your bottles, right?
Yeah. Marcus, I also want to apologize for taking so long to read these chapters.
Man, you guys went to the bus, man. We had all agreed on the date, and then of course the day of or day before, you guys were like, Vato.
Dude, Marcus, by Marcus' silent treatment, that was him being like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. I'm like, Vato, just give him some time, Vato.
Yeah.
Okay,
dude, so
context, don't worry, Art, I got this one, okay? We were supposed to film the podcast, we were supposed to film the podcast last week, and this is already after we've kind of pushed it off, so we're like, Thursday, or like what it was like Sunday, right? Sunday, ain't nothing gonna stop us. Cut to, hey, Bottles. It always happens, and it's always either mine or Art's fault. Marcus is over here reading the next book already.
Because it's like you guys both procrastinate too. That's the worst part. Is like because you guys like we have time to do it, but then you guys wait until the very last second to even start doing it.
And this is me defending myself. You're right.
I think I would be open to having a set schedule for podcast episodes.
He's compensating at this point. He's like
no. I'm just saying it like probably easier for me right now. But that would I think help incentivize not procrastinating. But I apologize, Marcus. I feel like this was your book, and it was rude to procrastinate on this one.
But it wasn't because this book isn't better than the other one, because trust me, dude, Foundations was lame. If you're watching us because of Foundations, I actually really like the book.
Hey man, Foundation was amazing.
We should be cognizant of the fact that like we may have an entirely different set of people watching these videos, right? Because it's probably people who like Googled Iceberg Slim Pimp, right?
Maybe saw the thumbnail.
And also, we might get a bump, as in 2 more viewers, because that Foundations thing is becoming a show on Apple TV. So,
have you guys seen that yet? You guys have?
I saw the trailer.
Huh?
I saw the trailer.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to, Vato. I know I never followed up on that, but yeah, I need to watch that myself. I haven't seen that. Did it look any good? Damn. Marcus, you really didn't like the Foundation.
No, I enjoyed it.
Times you said verbatim, I've said all I need to say about the book.
I don't think there's much going on. Okay, it's just kind of situationals. But enough with Foundation. We're talking Pimp now.
Yeah, I will say that this is a much more human story, and it really has you reflect on just like human nature and how malleable everything really is.
I'm also thinking.
Do you think we should just like summarize the whole rest of 1 through 6, kind of?
Like just go for it.
I guess like all of our favorite parts and everything, or.
My favorite part.
Why don't we just say from where like.
What does he call the cop in the prison? He doesn't call him because he beats
Foghorn?
huh?
Foghorn?
Calls him something. So do I get this right? In the prison, his cellmate gets the like shit beaten out of him because he smuggled in like a hot dog, but he
Yeah.
refers to the cop as something, and it's not like something I've heard recently or some. Anyway, I didn't realize it was cop until he's like, and then he beat the shit out of him with his pole,
Oh,
and
the
then like,
screw. They call him the screw, right?
yeah, I guess so. But then the guy freaking messed up, like, like he's not even like all there. Anyways, that part was pretty cool. That part was intense.
Dude,
that whole
there are so many scenes, scenes in this book that would just make really cool movie scenes.
Yeah, man, that's what I was thinking the whole time. And I think apparently a few movies have been made about.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the trailers or scenes or anything, but I saw some videos on YouTube.
And then the guy who gets beat up, that's his like religious buddy that he knew growing up. Like I was saying, like a good guy who grew up probably like with fine parents, but he still has ended up in jail. Like he's praying to Jesus every day.
Yeah, that's true.
He ends up getting whooped so bad that he loses his mind.
And the reason why they suspect, or why Iceberg Slim suspects that they even sent him to prison, was because he was caught with the white girl, his girlfriend. Like he was into this girl, she was into him, but someone caught them like making out or something on a sidewalk or something, and they were like, he must be raping her, and they pressured the girl to be like, yeah, he raped me. So they threw the book at him, and he just ended up like a real hardcore prison, and he ended up just having a fucked up life because he was like completely like he just lost it.
His own shit.
During that time, his mom became a born again Christian, and then he's like, oh no, she's like becoming a religious fanatic because she's like, you'll go to hell if you don't. You just give your life to the Lord, and his mom's a lot more worried about his well-being at this point. I mean, she always loved him. You got the sense that her life was messed up. She didn't make the best choices, but there was love there for him.
Yeah.
Which is why he always talked so highly of her and why he visited her grave. There was never any bitterness in his tone about her, his mother. It's like there was always a sense of forgiveness with that. What I got.
And then he gets out of jail, he goes back with his mom, right? Like to salon, and then somebody gets him a job, and then he meets this lady Pepper, who's like this ex-whore, and then she teaches him like all the nastiest moves in bed.
Is she white or is she Asian?
I think she's black.
What?
Yeah, they call her yellow, right? But it's like a yellow bone or a red bone.
Oh, dude, I'm an idiot. Okay.
I hope you know the answer.
Okay.
But she's like a light-skinned black woman.
Huh. Okay, yeah. Go on. Sorry.
And they're using like drugs, and I think this is the first time he's using drugs in the book. He starts using like crystal cocaine, and then he starts talking about taken advantage of sexually. And I'd never heard this before, but apparently it's been called Georgied. And so he's like getting Georgied by this woman, And then when he's doing that, he tries to get money from her for their sexual encounter. And then I think he hits her, and then she bites him and like turns him on. And so like it doesn't even work, like trying to get the money. Like that's how much of like an old tough whore she is,
Yeah.
And then
she's just like a freak.
And then
she's
has himself sapped like an old man. Like I just picture him like, shriveled up.
Well, then he finds out that she's with plenty of other dudes while she's with him, and he's just kind of like, what? I'm not the only dude, and that just kind of breaks his heart for a bit. Bruises his ego.
Doesn't he beat her up too?
I'm sure he beats her up, but I'm sure that also like messes with his psyche again, making him more abusive to like women just to make sure that he's the one in control or has the power over them. It's just, yeah.
So he wants to like prostitute her around. Like he just has this idea that he just like wants to like whore people around. And so his idea is like, okay, maybe I can get her to have sex for me for money. And she's like, no. I don't know whether they have the conversation, but she's clearly like, no, dude, you're just like my little plaything. And so he goes to this other random pimp. We won't get into the story.
He calls him a gorilla pimp, which is kind of like a pimp that just uses like muscle, I think his name is Weeping Shorty. And he asked him for advice on controlling her. And
And his advice is essentially,
there's no controlling her. She's crazy. She's been with other guys. Like,
yeah.
you're
she's
not.
too much of a veteran.
Wow.
And
So he's the one that basically tells her like, dude, you should just leave. She's old school. Like, you're too young.
It's some guy who's like a detective, and if he finds out that you're sleeping with her, it's over for you, because he's also on parole at this time, and being watched closely.
And then he comes in later and he's like, hey, I've got a job for you. You know how you told me if I ever found a way to con Pepper to let you know, well, I got something. All you got to do is show up at this hotel room and like have your fun with her. And like he's trying to be like very secretive about it, and Iceberg Slim's like, dude, just tell me, I want to know more.
It's like they're trying to like blackmail somebody that they're gonna take pictures, and he's like, oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
He's like, yeah, like totally. Like, how much are you paying me? Like, that's
and I'm a pimp. Yeah. It's a great.
And he said $500, which at the time I feel like would probably be like $1 million. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually got the sense that it wasn't like enough. Like he just like was just like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. Like, how much? Like not that much, but
And then so
but yeah, like a lot for his position for sure. But he ends up doing it, and what ends up happening is that somehow or another they end up framing him and saying that he burglarized Pepper's and her husband's home, and so it's not super interesting, but he ends up going to jail, right?
Yeah.
And then it's when he gets out of jail that he's back with his mom. And that's kind of, I think, the start of chapter 3. So we're at least halfway through chapter 4. So we're at least.
But at the end of chapter 3, it starts talking about like how at the jail he was hanging out with the pimps, and then one of them tells him basically that he's got to like kill all of his emotions, and calls it like scream theory.
Oh, that
was an important part too, because that shows why going forward, why he like you have to kill your emotions. Like you can't be human, because to have emotions is to be human, and. It's just dehumanizing shit.
So just leading up to there, just so that I can comment on like what happened at the prison that was important too, is he says that's when he started hanging around with like older pimps and other people who had like lived that life that he was wanting to live, and he just started soaking everything in, right? And so his whole thought process was like, while I'm in here, I'm gonna learn as much as I can so that when I go out, I'm like ready to hit the ground running, right? And what he says at the very end of the chapter too is like, he's like, I met an old drag man, and he calls him at one point a convict philosopher, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
But he gives them two like pieces of advice that I thought were super interesting, because it's essentially what like mindfulness meditation tries to teach to a degrry.
I think it's like the exact opposite. It's like
it's talking about the same dynamic, right? But
yeah.
like talking about that.
Control your mind.
I did quote this, so like I'd love to read it if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
He says, always remember. These were the two pieces of advice from that guy while in prison. He goes, always remember, whether you be a sucker or a hustler in the world out there, you've got that vital edge if you can ironclad your feelings. I picture the human mind as a movie screen. If you're a dopey sucker, you'll just sit and watch all kinds of mind-wrecking, damn fool movies on the screen. Son, there is no reason, except a stupid one, for anybody to project on that screen anything that will worry him or dull that vital edge. After all, we are the absolute bosses of that whole theater and show in our minds. We even write the script. So always write positive, dynamic scripts and show only the best movies for you on that screen, whether you were a pimp or a priest.
That is beautiful. That is good.
It's just like this, like, like prison wisdom, but it's like, it's essentially like people meditating on the fact that like you essentially have this like dynamic of like, what are your thoughts, right? Except these like
you can manifest your thoughts.
Correct. Or if you're not at all attentive to it, you do have a stream of like thoughts that are playing there, whether you're conscious of it or not, that you're not in control of, right? So if you're like repeating shitty stuff or like shitty stories to yourself, like you're going to believe that stuff.
I believe that.
So it's just interesting that these are like lessons that humans can learn no matter the situation. Like they're pretty universal, they're just like, obviously not saying the conclusions are right exactly, but just like thinking about the mind and like how you think about your own world and reality.
Mm-hmm. And then so with that, he leaves jail and we enter chapter 4, a degree in pimping. like, I mean, this is almost like he just got out of high school or something, and now he's like, all right, I'm gonna do my shit now.
Yeah.
But throughout this
And then
time, he's having nightmares about his mom. And go ahead, Robert.
Sorry, I was going to say, and then at this point, from this point, it just gets super abusive. Like over, I feel like every other page was like, and then I slapped her until she was begging for more. And it's like,
So this is basically him being like the pimp that this book is going to be about, right? Like this is him starting his
like
life,
his origin story.
Yeah. And dude, he starts it off so beautifully with such vivid imagery again with these two dreams. I think, Marcus, you're going to dive into that. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't remember the dreams. I just wrote that he had nightmares and that they were about his mom. And he was like, I wrote, punish this evil woman. And
yeah.
He's so desperate to pimp while he's having all these horrible nightmares, like almost like his guilt, you know?
So it's just like, I mean, I never have like such symbolic dreams, but these are like such explicitly symbolic and just vivid. But the first one that he talks about, he says he was a glowing godly figure with like fantastic clothes and like wearing like silk underwear and crazy suits, and his toes would be as sharp as daggers, and he would be booting these like prostitutes in front of him, like these gorgeous women. He was booting them onto sharp steel stakes, torturing them and killing them, and like they'd be bleeding. And like it's just like, what the hell is this guy dreaming, man? But he'd wake up and I think he was like turned on by them, right?
Yeah.
And then the second one that he talks about, a recurring dream that he'd have, was he would see this like giant like Christ with like eyes of blazing blue suns, and he would just like tower over him and point at this woman in front of him, and he would be commanding, punish this evil woman, destroy the devil inside her, the Lord so directs thee. And then so he's just like, yeah, sure. Like, and he picks up like, I think a whip he said he had, and he just starts like striking as hard as he can at this like woman. And then at the end of the dream, she turns around and it's his mom. Yeah. And he wakes up and he's just like fucked up by it. He's like having a panic attack. And he says that he gets this all the time, but he basically says that it like takes him out for like a week, right? Like when he has these like real intense dreams. So it's just crazy. Like it just opens up with that, and you're like, damn, dude, this guy's dealing with some like really crazy shit.
And then he ends up going to a bar, and then he talks to this woman, and he kind of presumes that she's trying to Georgie him. And then so he reverses the tables, and instead of her buying him a drink, he buys her a drink. They go to her place, and then he tells himself, like, don't give it up for free while she's doing all this shit. Like, you got to get your money.
So it's like he starts hearing the lessons that he obviously learned right in the prison, and he's telling us, like, as we read, and while this is happening, he's like, man, I just got to be like a jerk to her, right? So like it's like it gives us his thoughts, and then it'll say like what his dialogue was to her, and the whole time he's just like, bitch, like you ain't nobody and whatever. Like
her ass, literally, like just right into the anus.
Yeah. So yeah, when they get back, she's like, yeah, like I'll be with you, whatever, and like she's obviously trying to sleep with him at that point, and he just like starts like beating her.
He kill her, and then go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, she starts calling him daddy. It's one of the deals. It's just like you abuse someone so much that they become like they're just so fogged up in the brain, and then that you feel like there's like a connection, and it's just like a very abusive relationship where they can't seem to get out of it, or they want more of it. I don't know the psychology behind it. I'm not going to try to understand.
That the lady was probably beat up by her dad or something, or her father figure.
Yeah. But it seemed like that was the route to go. Like every pimp did that, right? Like they had they got them by like hurting them, and that kind of turned them on to want more of it. That's how it seemed like, at least in the. Like
I definitely think that dynamic was at play, but I think that it was part of the pimp culture and the pimp wisdom was not to necessarily turn someone into like a whore, but to like literally prey on like abused, damaged women, and then like figure out like how fucked up they were, and then start like messing with that psychology by like being shitty to them, but then like being like fatherly to them, and like
somebody holds a gun to your head, you know, like you have to say yes, and then when you say yes, like it's kind of like this relief. I bet that would wash over you, and like you just feel like love or some type of connection. Or I don't know. It's a pretty weird.
It's weird, man.
Yeah.
Man, I'm sorry, Robert. I couldn't understand what you said.
No, I just said it's like a lot of daddy issues and other things roll into one, I guess.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. I don't know how that works, man, but I imagine honestly, because like I think back to his like super hypersexual experiencing that cuckold situation in real life, and like I think that's what led him. Like that's just my view.
Yeah.
But like I have to imagine, or actually, I mean, I don't know. Like even the 3-year-old thing, like that. Like I guess he just has a number of things that have happened, right?
I think everything that's in the book is for a reason. Like it's all.
But basically, what I'm saying though is like specifically, it's like hardcore sexual experiences are more impressionable on like the psychology of a young person, I think, because like that's like the deepest like sensory emotional kind of system we have, right? Or like one of
pain and pleasure. Are really linked up.
Yeah, but like sexual pleasure specifically is like that's like reproduction, right? That's like tied to our evolution. So like if someone hacks that in a way that just like I don't know, like basically what I'm trying to say is like I imagine all these like messed up girls also had like really weird either intense or just like particularly hypersexual experiences.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a good like community too much where people were having any like nice experiences growing up, or like majority nice. Seems like everybody's gonna have something fucked up happen to them, and I think that's life in general too. But obviously some lives are gonna be a lot harder to go through.
It just seems like a lot of these girls though, they like because of the daddy stuff, they were like also specifically into like abuse and like like I feel like that has to be a very specific like you get there from a specific set of experiences, not just like I had a shitty parents or something, therefore I fucking love like kinky sex.
But
who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, and so he tortures her, like he ties her up against the bed, and I think she passes out a couple times or 4 times, and then
she like is in and out of consciousness.
And then when he says like he orgasms, and he calls it a blast of hate, I thought that was real powerful.
Yeah, dude, the way his own like internal thoughts throughout this whole time, like he knows it's like he knows how fucked up a lot of this stuff is, and he's just like what do you do with it? Like it's just like that's all he knows. So
and then after doing that, he demands that she give him his her car, her Ford, and then he goes home and he packs up his bags and says goodbye to his mom, and then she's in tears like as he's leaving.
And so it's almost like full circle for the mom where when she left Henry, that scene way back.
Oh yeah, I didn't
was
think
like
about that, but that's true.
He was literally like on his knees, like begging her not to leave him. Like he was being totally vulnerable, and that's kind of what she is too. She's like, "Don't leave me. We're all we have." Like, and he was like, he lied to her, right? Iceberg Slim. He says like, "I got a job." He's literally been back for a day, I think, right? Like literally that day, he goes out to the club, and then he just gets into that relationship with that girl and immediately just turns it around. And so he's been there for like hours, and the next day he's like, I got a car, I've got this girl who is gonna be my prostitute, so I'm gonna go pick up my stuff from my mom's home. And so he doesn't even want to tell the mom. She catches him packing, and she's like, don't leave me, where are you going? Like,
he's still like mad at her, obviously.
And but he lies to her, like I said, saying he's like, I got a job in the city as a clerk or something, I'm still gonna visit you, but like everything's gonna be okay, but I'm gonna leave. And she knows like she's like, I'm never gonna see you again,
Yeah, because he's like shows up in this new car and everything. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, so it's just like fucked up, man. Like
I was saying, we are only on up to chapter 6. Does it get like way more intense than this? Like, does it just get like crazier and crazier throughout the book?
Who, me?
Yeah.
It gets, there's crazy parts for sure coming up, and just gritty parts, but I think it's front loaded, I think, at the beginning, just to like show, like, if you can't get past that, then you shouldn't even be reading this book, but
like if you can't get first couple pages, it's like
Yeah.
warm.
Dude, well,
I think that's probably like the most horrifying stuff to read was like in the beginning with him torturing this girl and then him also getting raped by that lady.
yeah, so I'll admit, dude, my hesitation with this book was I generally don't like spending a lot of time thinking about like the shittiest people that exist. You know, like I know a lot of people were into like these like documentaries about like people who were like serial rapists and like murderers and stuff, and like I just can't watch that shit. Like I feel like
That's nice.
like I just like I don't have the stomach to just like be there for a long time. Like I know like shitty people and shitty circumstances exist. So I was just thinking like, damn, like it's going to be a whole book of this. But immediately I understood, like I said in the beginning, the preface is just like it just throws you in that world. And it's just like, this is how brutal everything is. Like the psychology of how I treat these women.
Yeah.
And then the foreword before the book starts is like, hey, I'm not that guy anymore. That was like a shitty life. And I'm writing this to hopefully keep people from anything close to this.
I was going to say
so
that's a big
I
difference.
thought like there's going to be redemption here. Like this is someone who kind of figured it out, right? Hopefully. So I'm looking forward to that.
It humanizes like a lot of the people that, you know, like most people would say like, oh, they did what? Like kill them. They deserve to die, or, you know, like go to jail for life, or like they don't ever should be let out. But then I mean, people are redeemable and people can do incredible things this no matter what their past is. Like it kind of just depends where you go and what's around you and all the context, you know. But I think
I think that really is, it's like it's really like how malleable our realities are, right? Like that's even our psychological realities or our relationships. It's like you can, I mean, I don't know the actual like research on this or anything, but I imagine like it is true that you can take someone from like the worst, most fucked up neighborhood in the country and take them into like the community that is the exact opposite of that, and there would be like rehabilitation if there was like a sincere interest on both the individual and the environment around him to like just like start new.
Yeah, I'm not real quick. I gotta go pee, but you guys keep going.
Yeah. Do we want to pause real quick? Actually, I feel like I should charge my battery here.
Just keep it going.
No.
Hey,
You know, our charge. I'll go talk. I'll talk to the audience real quick.
Okay, go for it.
So, guys, hope you guys are enjoying this so far. So, it turns out I have the next book suggestion, and what these Vatos don't know is that I'm probably going to choose Twilight. Think about it. 3 random Vatos reading Twilight. I could already see the success, the views. I think it'd be a good... Oh, hey, Art. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Have you read Twilight?
I'm not opposed. I don't know much about the story. I'm pretty sure I've seen the movies, all of them. It'd be a quick read for sure, I think.
Thinking about it. Thinking it more from a comedic level.
Yeah.
You're like,
sure.
You know what?
I mean, it's more a love story than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Sure. It'd be interesting at the very least to have, for the first time, a book that we actually have a good idea of, because I'm sure you guys have seen the movies too.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to 3 grown-ass men reading a book made for, you know, teens. Or maybe not. Maybe
yeah, dude. You know what? Actually, that could be very interesting, because it'd be fun to play with how much of an audience we could build just from
Don't work.
Okay.
He'll find out while he's editing. Be like, podcast canceled. Okay, fine. I'll tell you. I was thinking what I might choose for our next book, and I'm really thinking like how we can really take this podcast and turn it to
where's your pitch going this time?
Listen, dude, Foundations almost sunk us down. I'm kidding, Art, and that was all you. No, I'm kidding.
Dude, I like the book, okay?
Hey, I'm kidding. I really am. But anyways, my my suggestion is that we read Twilight next. Marcus, you there? Marcus has left the chat.
No. I mean, it's your choice. You get to pick.
Think about the sweet audience, man.
Let's hear in the comments below, Twilight or I'll figure it out.
Okay, so chapter 5, the jungle fauna. He meets these characters, dress me up red and horse face, and they tell him like, hey, we can get you some suits for cheap. And then so he's like, okay, cool, we'll meet up. And this is like late at night when they're at their bar or something. And then he goes back to his car, and then he sees that it's broken into. And then he sees like a whore on the streets. And then he sees a guy he tries to convince to play craps. Oh, he meets Pretty Preston, who was like this character from his past who used to do, Iceberg used to shine his shoes, right? And then I think he was like a pimp back then, and Iceberg knows that. And so he's like, man, you've got to give me some tips. Like, I don't know what I'm doing out here. Something like that.
It's crazy how often it seems that he just like bumps into people that he knows, you know, like.
You gotta figure it's pretty small, like in the 20s.
I don't know, man. They're in Chicago.
I would still think like you would know everybody.
Dude,
I mean,
I don't think I've ever bumped into anyone I know ever. Like,
but if you go to Wesco, every time you go out, you bump into somebody you know.
Maybe.
Go to the HB.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I guess like people were just.
But it's not Wesley. Even.
But then different. Also, if you, I don't know if it's like in these sections or in the next sections, but he talks about how, like, if you're like in that community, like that black community, you mostly stayed within those confines. Like nobody really went out.
That's a good point.
I don't know, because like this whole thing is like biracial, like sex couples.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you're thinking yellow people or white people or Asian people.
No, there's like the whole dynamic of like there's a lot of talk about like making sure that only his prostitute is trying to trick the white men and not the black men. And the same with like white women who go look for black men to just like dominate them. It's like it's just like the weird sex kinky stuff going on.
Yeah, it's category on Pornhub.
I'm sure it is. Hey Marcus, I just realized you shaved your beard, dude. Like you look different. Now I'm trying to figure out what it was.
You think it was the gold chain? This is Sarah's, by the way.
I was hoping to find a gold chain. I felt like that would have brought my own.
I'm kind of feeling it, man. I'm looking very Fast and Furious.
Hey,
you look like it's kind of like, you know how baseball players, they also kind of rock chains in a weird way.
Yeah.
But like they're not black, but it's like
like maybe, Michael Jordan dunking.
No, but you do look good clean shaven. How does it feel dirty, man? You're the first of the 3. Arts is coming up in a couple of days here.
Hey, you know what I realized?
What?
Robert, we had one of our first podcasts on your birthday, right?
Really?
Well, at the very least, we celebrated after. I don't know if it was on.
Yeah. That's true. It was like on the day or around the time. It's crazy.
Man, judging by the way how this one's going, we might have to like break this one into 2 parts.
I think we can finish it pretty quickly because chapter 5 it kind of just sets up his situation of like trying to establish like, okay, now I'm gonna pimp, right? So like the whole idea.
Meeting Sweet Jones.
Yeah. So he figures out. So Preston basically gives him the rundown, and he's like, hey, I got one prostitute with me. Like, where should I go? Like, how should I think about this? And he's like, okay, the main thing you need to know is, like, this is gonna be the place to prostitute your prostitute out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 main pimps are Sweet Jones and Poison. And Poison was someone that he had seen just that day before, that same night, beating
the shit out of somebody.
Yeah. And
one of his whores.
And in passing, he sees this and he's like, in his mind, or actually he says out loud to someone, he's like that guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like if he knew better, he would know that if a cop showed up, like he'd be in jail. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, that guy's a cop. He's a cop and a pimp. And so he's like, oh. And so he's told later on by this guy that he was a pimp. And so that's crazy. He's like a cop pimp. But he's number 2, and apparently the number 1 guy is Sweet Jones. And there's like a whole story about how Sweet Jones, fucked over Preston, who's telling him the story about him.
Yeah.
Way back in the day when he used to be a pimp. And
Like
that's
when he
maybe
was
not so important.
Like that he drugged him, right? And like
he basically got him hooked on heroin and took
Yeah.
his stable, which is like are his women, right? To start whoring out for him instead. And so like he just like fucked him over. And then so hooks him on drugs. I mean, I was going to go into the story, but now that it's there, it's like he hooks him on drugs, and then at one point he's about to pass out or something, and Sweet Jones shows up.
Oh, he's going cold turkey. That's why, like, because he had him supplied him with drugs, and so
yeah, but it was only 24 hours though.
Yeah, that's how much heroin.
But he's fucked up, and he's on the floor, and he's like, please go like shoot it up for me and like cook it for me. And so he goes and he's taking his time, Sweet Jones, like torturing him basically. And he finally shoots him up and he, gets back to whatever. And so he comes to and he's like, dude, I know you're fucking me over. Please just give me $1,000 so that I can kick this and then give me one of my prostitutes back or something. And Sweet Jones is like, yeah, don't worry. Yes. And it's weird. Like, it's almost like he's treating him like he's a prostitute. Because he's like being like sweet to him, being like, "Don't worry, sweet." He's calling him sweet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's his name, Sweet Jones, isn't it?
Oh no. I don't know. He's doing some. He's being affectionate in like a weird way to Preston. He's caressing him, going like, "Don't worry." It's like that weird reverse thing. But then so he's like, okay, like he's gonna take care of me. And then what ends up happening is Sweet Jones apparently called 2 cops on him, so they bust in on him and then they take him to jail. And that's like
jail, and then he gets like shivved while he's in jail, and then I forget what part of his body it messes up, but it's like never the same,
Yeah, so he's just fucked up, and so he holds that against, like there's that just like random backstory with like them two. He's like, he's my sworn enemy.
Well, I think it kind of, it's like almost like foreshadowing too of like, hey, this is not gonna be like a easy go. It's not gonna be a nice life.
Yeah.
And then especially with those guys that are the guys that you're aiming to be or be like. And then he tells him like he hasn't had a horse since then, and then he's like, go find someplace easier. But then Iceberg is like really determined, like he needs to become a pimp. And then so Preston gets yelled at and goes back inside, and then Slim leaves him some money, like a little tip, I guess. And then that's when Preston tells him like, maybe you do got what it takes, like maybe I'm wrong. And then as he's like leaving, he hears a couple pimps talking. And then somebody was like ripped off, and then something about fixing somebody's whore. Bartender.
I think the only other just important thing is like he sets up shop by finding a hotel to rent for like a week, and that's going to be like the first week of him like being a pimp. And so he goes back to find what's the girl's name that he has?
The Runt,
but like
her name
Priscilla?
is Phyllis. Phyllis.
I thought it was just a
Phyllis.
name. Like, I know it was someone's name.
I thought it was like drugs or something.
Yeah, or no, I thought Runt was code for a girl, but like a different, like a disparaging name. But I didn't know that was.
I think it is.
That's like his first.
No, it's not.
Lady.
Her name's not Runt.
That's what Marcus said.
Oh, it's her like a nickname.
Oh, well, that's what I mean. I figured it was her nickname. I know, like Iceberg Slim's.
Yeah. Her real name is Phyllis, and then they call her the Runt, or at least.
Yeah, he does. And so he goes back and he like finally just picks her up and like takes her back to the hotel and like sets up shop, and that's chapter 5.
Wait, doesn't he like beat her up too? He punches her and KOs her?
Yeah, he beats her up because like he shows up after he's been gone for that one day, just like figuring stuff out, like scoping out where he's gonna set up shop or whatever. And he comes back and she meets him. She's like, "Oh, Daddy, I love you. I miss you." And he just starts fucking wailing her.
But he mentions it's because he thinks about his dad, Henry. Like, that's so fucked up. Like, just hearing "I love you" like makes him think about his dad, and then it pisses him off.
So he says he's like, I don't know why I did it. Like, to this day, I still couldn't tell you exactly why I just like unleashed on her. But like, obviously, he's like reflecting on like all the fucked up shit that's happened.
Mm-hmm. And then she wakes up and he's like, "Look, you're a whore. I'm a pimp. That's how it's gonna be." And then
so he just has to be super cold.
Yeah.
All right, last chapter, man.
So
I got no notes on this one. I'm just realizing, but I remember the chapter. So
Yeah, so Slim and the Run upgrade hotels. They change streets, and then she goes out and starts making money for him. Scratch. And then Slim goes for a shoe shine, and then he goes to the bar, the Roost, and sees Sweet Jones, and that's like the number one pimp that they're talking about.
He sees Sweet Jones roll up with like 10, I think, different prostitutes in a car whose name I forget, but they keep referring to the car. It sounds like an expensive car.
Yeah, Duesenberg. I had to Google it to see how cool it looked, and it did.
Did it look cool?
Yeah.
It sounded like a cool car. But yeah, so like he just again like paints that picture of like that's what you imagine, that's what I imagine a pimp looking like, especially at that time, right? Just like,
and then dude, there's no rappers or like a whole lot of sports stars at that time, so it's like how else is a black person?
Yeah, that's like the well, I'm not sure if Sweet Jones was dressed like flamboyantly or not, but I think he was, right?
Yeah, he's a pimp.
Yeah. But yeah, like that's like kind of that just like being a pimp. You know what's weird? I reflected on too is just like what a weird thing that being a pimp is even like a thing to want to aspire to. Not literally, but like the fact that like, you know, like there are songs like I'm a pimp, you know, like
PIMP.
PIMP. And it's just like I'm not sure if that's the name of it.
Artemis Prime hit song,
but,
I'm a pimp.
You know that song I'm a pimp. But it's just weird that like this was such a brutal world, and yet there is like this like weird just like caricature of that, and like almost in a like I don't know,
but that's kind of like with everything bad too, like Scarface or you know, like we like bad guys.
True.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, you know, that was everyone rooted for Walt.
Who do you guys have any idea of who you guys would want to play this guy?
No,
dude.
No, man. I want fucking like Denzel Washington playing him. Like
now.
I think this could be. Yeah, I kept thinking throughout the book, like I kept wanting to picture like these like hardcore actors.
Maybe John Boyega.
But he was just too young. Who?
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan.
That could work. I mean, especially I don't know. I mean, Marcus, you know what happens with the rest of his life. So like I don't know where he's, you know, how many chapters are devoted to the most to like one particular age range. But but I don't know. I just kept thinking, man, someone needs to make like a serious movie about this. I guess I'll have to watch like what's out there to see how good they are. But like this is like worthy of serious, you know, like writing.
See, but man, the world is still not ready for this type of stuff, man. Like I
really don't be, dude. If you go ahead.
It can't be a movie. I think it's more like an HBO type of deal, or yeah, it's pretty intense.
I mean, sure, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you can, yeah, like it'd be cool to see, you know, a film about this.
But you know, like Oliver, like doubts coming into the book, like whether or not it was going to be a good book, because I kind of had the same doubts. I think a lot of people would have those same doubts if it was made into a TV show, and they would see all the characters and everything and be like, oh, that's not for me. That's not what I like to watch, you know?
Be like, oh, it's a pimp hood movie.
Easy to dismiss, I think. But
yeah, you're right. But that's why if you get like Denzel Washington or someone, it'd be like, holy shit, like this is, you know, because like, I mean, that's the whole point of like having like great, I mean, that's what's so cool about actors, I think, right? Or like just like acting, is you show like the life of like a really unique, interesting person authentically. Like you tell that story, like this fucked up life would so far make a really compelling movie, I think. Or I mean, it is a compelling story about like human nature and just like psychology, even society, just socioeconomics.
And then, man, Sweet Jones is such a badass. He's walking around with a pet ocelot.
Yeah.
And then
so he's just like a caricature, right? Yeah.
He calls Slim over, like, "Hey, come over here." And then Slim's like, "Oh shit! Like, what's gonna happen here?"
Well, the Mexican lady calls him over.
Yeah.
The only reason why I correct that is because like Mexican, she's the only Mexican so far. Vatos podcast. Shout out to her. Forget her name.
Shout out. Yeah, and then so like they're like, hey, this lady wants to fuck you, and then he doesn't want to because he's like trying to be a pimp. He's like, no, I don't pay for that.
No, but he's super respectful. Remember, because he's like I learned how to talk to these guys, and you got to basically I wish I could quote that. Maybe no. He goes into it saying like you got to treat them like you treat like the white master in like the slave areas or something. Like just the way he phrased it was like he was very intentional about the way he was going to refer to him, and so he's being super deferential to him, saying like I'm trying to be a pimp just like you, and he's because he calls him the first thing he says he's like do you know who I am?
He was saying like you got to be like an Uncle Tom, I think, right? Like you gotta like to them, like
yeah, basically. But and so that's kind of what he's doing. He's like just kissing his ass, saying like, oh, I just want to be a pimp like you. Like everyone knows you. Like every black person in the world knows who you are.
Yeah.
And what he's trying not to do is like he's trying to show like I'm not some like chump that you're gonna just trick, or like there's so many words, man. I don't know what these words mean, but it's like he doesn't want to get played, and he thinks he's trying to get played by having, because he says like, hey, Sweet Jones is telling him, he's like, hey, one of my whores wants to like fuck you, and I'm happy to give my whores what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But he's basically just saying like I'm gonna get you to pay for sex with my whore, like making me money.
Like
he's
threatening him to do it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not gonna fall for that just because you're threatening me. So he's like, I'm actually a pimp, and on pimp principle, like I don't, like have sex with whores or something, right? Like he says that thing, but he's trying to be super respectful still. And so the girl's like Sweet Jones, like fuck him up, right? Like just like fuck him up, make him sleep with, like throw one of the whores, one of the names, I don't know what her name was, but she was like throw her at him to teach him a lesson. And it's just like a weird thing. It's like a tense moment.
And then he gives Iceberg gives Sweet Jones money, right? Like when he leaves, like because he's kind of like scared, I guess.
I forget. That's possible.
He does. And then so he goes back to his car, and then he sees Preston again. And then Preston comes in with a gun, and he's like, I'm gonna do it, or like you should do it. You should go kill him. And then he's like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, fine, I'll do it. And then what happens after that?
Did you guys ever watch The Wire?
Oh.
I started the first couple episodes, didn't get past that, but here it's a great show.
The Wire's good, man. I never finished the series, but
that makes three of us.
There's one character though that reminded me of this Preston guy. But yeah, so whatever, Preston goes and tries, but then he like doesn't do it. He backs out. Excuse me.
And then Slim goes to speak to Jones's accomplice, or Sweet Jones's accomplice.
Oh, that's what happens. Yeah, that's the last thing, like major thing that happens, right? What's his name?
And then Glass Top.
Yeah.
And then so they go and get like coke and marijuana, and then he's like, "Give me some tips." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then so they go and inject drugs, and they're just chilling out on the couch. And then Glass Top is telling him like, "Hey, Sweet Jones isn't as bad as he pretends to be. Like he's only killed a couple people." And then
he's like, he's killed 4 people in 20 years and no one in the last like 4 years.
Yeah. And
so
I think everybody's
telling him like it's all an act.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought what your pimp name would be?
Yes, I was thinking about that.
Damn, dude, no.
All right, Marcus, what would yours be? I
couldn't come up with any. It's kind of hard. I think I did come up with one, but I forgot it.
My working one would be like, my working title would be Cheeto Puff, I guess.
Cheeto Puff.
I don't know why. I just can't remember. But I probably have a better one.
That's not a bad one, though. Don't got one.
By the end of this series, we'll all have one.
Yeah.
And then we'll just call each other that.
Yeah. But that's an interesting scene when he goes back to his house.
Yeah.
Because like his whole idea though too is like specifically, I'll meet with him who's friends with Sweet Jones, and through him I'll meet Sweet Jones, right? Because he's like very adamant about trying to learn from the best.
Dude, I love the phrase that they use. Like, I need somebody to like pull my coat. Is this the way they say it? Or I need somebody to.
There's so many phrases in yeah, it's interesting. I thought I was gonna get kind of tired of it really quickly, but I adapted somewhat.
Yeah, once you learn it, like it becomes really fun. And then like sometimes you have to like Google something that's kind of just like way out there or that's not in the glossary. But I mean, I think it's still fun to learn, like all the different names.
It definitely brings a sense of the era
Yeah,
to me.
that's what I love
It's
about
like the era and like that particular like really
vernacular.
narrow culture. Yeah, so he goes to talk to him after Sweet Jones leaves. They whatever chit chat. He tells him he's trying to be a pimp too, and he's new. And like you said, he takes him back to his place, and then they strip down to like their underwear because they decide to shoot up, right?
Yeah.
And at first, slime, Iceberg Slim is he's like, I'm not going to shoot up heroin. Like he was telling himself in his head, like I'm definitely not going to do that.
Yeah, because he's remembering the story that he was told. Oh,
Yeah,
you guys named it.
And I forget how it happens, but he's just like convinced to do it. So he does it, and so it's the first time he shoots up, and the way he describes it is also like super interesting, and it kind of, it's like a really vivid way to describe shooting up. It's like it reminded me of like the Quentin Tarantino Pulp Fiction scene.
Yeah.
Just the way that was shot, like it really, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the same feeling. That's weird how writing can do that, but I guess that's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah. And so he shoots up and he describes it, and it's like fucking crazy. I've never shot up heroin.
It makes it sound enjoyable.
Huh?
He makes it sound enjoyable.
He really does. It's like it at the very least very intense, right? Like,
yeah,
like physiologically, whatever's happening is, I'm sure, like super intense, right? And whatever. So he's there until 5. That he ends up leaving, and what happens? He just goes back and
he goes back home, and then he finds out that the runt didn't have a good night. Like she
yeah. I think so he kind of flips out.
Proceeds to abuse her, just like all the chapters have ended so far.
Yeah, he's just like really shitty to her, and he like tells her off, and she inevitably like starts like scratching his back, and she whispers like, "I'm sorry, Daddy, please forgive me. Like, don't not love me," or something. Damn, what was I gonna say? I felt like there was one thing that I wanted to. Oh, the last thing he said that was very cool. Actually, one of you guys can say something while I locate.
Robert, go ahead. You haven't spoken too much.
To be honest with you, the last page just escaped me, so I was just when I say escaped me, I didn't read the last pages. So look at Marcus staring at me in disappointment again. Just, dude, I am loving the book though. I will say that. I'm gonna read.
We start by saying like, this is great, right? Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you found the quote.
Oh, I did. It actually, now that I read it, I remember like I didn't get it. But I remember as I was reading it, I thought like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. It's gonna be profound. But like I didn't get what he meant. But I'll just read it, see what you guys got. So like the very last paragraph, like 2 sentences is. So they're in bed, right? She apologizes after he's shitty to her when he finds out that she didn't make any money or whatever. And he's like dozing off into sleep because he's still, I think he got high again after he got home, right? Mm-hmm. If not, he's just like drifting off because like he's been having like drugs throughout.
Yeah.
Right? So he says, I could feel that yellow drawing a heavy black curtain inside my dome. Just before I went under, I thought, I wonder if the runt can lug 150 pounds to that window. What did he mean by that?
I think you're talking about himself. Like, so the yellow is like a downer. So he's saying like I could feel the downer, like turning off my thoughts. Like I was falling asleep, and then I guess he's just thinking about the runt, and like he's thinking like hopefully she doesn't try to kill me in my sleep or anything. Like he doesn't trust her.
Gotcha.
And I said I didn't read the last 20 pages, but I did read the last 3 pages to be like, okay, well, at least I'll know what I'm trying to figure out.
Oh my God, Vatos, please just start reading tomorrow and just read 10 minutes every day. You'll finish it, no problem.
Yeah, man, this was good. I thought it did a really good job with it. Just like, I don't know, man. I really, really enjoyed both the foreword and the preface before even getting into the book, because it just like, boom, it just throws you in there, and it just convinced me immediately, like, okay, this is going to be an intense story that will have wisdom, like there will be real human lived experience that results in just like a person like realizing some truths about life, which I thought super interesting. And so there's that aspect. And then, like I've said, it's like you can have that, but if you're like a shitty writer, like it doesn't matter because it's just not going to come on to the pages, right? But he happens to be a well thought out person and a pretty decent writer. So like
a great writer too. And then I love like all the slang. I think that's like it's almost like solving a puzzle, you know, like when you don't know it.
Yeah, for sure. I honestly, there are a lot of words that I just like didn't worry about getting.
Well, I figured they'd come up again through the book, so then eventually be like, oh, that's what he meant, or just kind of
they do
like what it means.
They definitely have, and I felt like that was my motivation too. Just like I'll get it with context clues. That hasn't quite worked out perfectly.
Do you have one that you were confused about?
I mean, I could throw a lot of out there that I don't remember whether I totally remember or not. So tricked is specifically like
that's like the person that
that's like the person that you're gonna fuck.
Yeah, like if you're a whore, you're looking for tricks. Like you're looking
tricks.
For like you're gonna turn money out. Get it?
There's a lot of slang with like drugs, but then also other words that it's like C's, and I think the amounts of money too throw me off. Like what were the different amounts of money?
I forget. There's like a dime back or like a double back or something, or sawbuck.
Yeah, there are all these things.
$20.
Yeah, I don't know how rich he is or not, or how much money he's making or not.
Yeah, it's hard.
Really getting
Google all the money stuff. Like just type in like monetary slang and then put the word in quotes and it'll come up. Because I did that a few times.
Yeah, I might do that. Yeah, man, this is a cool book. I'm digging it. I'm looking forward to the rest. How many chapters are there? Like how are we going to divide this?
So if we do every episode of 6 chapters, we'll do 4 episodes.
Nice. I'm down for 6, man.
You mean 4? Or like 6 chapters?
I mean 6. Yeah, 6. Yeah, like 6 next chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm down. This is cool. What else? We should have like an end of the episode, like so we're gonna answer these specific questions, maybe.
Maybe what do you guys predict is gonna happen?
I'm just kind of.
Go ahead.
I'm curious if he starts to turn his life around. I feel like there's way more, obviously, that happens. But I'm wondering, like, what age is he like? You know what? The things I've been doing have not been good. So, yeah, I'm curious. I don't know. I don't have any predictions. I'm assuming when he's like in the 60s, maybe. I think he's gonna have a long career in pimping. But I don't know how old he lives to. I know he died in 92, but I don't know how old he was when he died.
In the interviews that I saw of him, he looked like he was masked, but he sounded and looked physically fairly young, and he sounded fairly young. So like, and he seemed like he was like years removed from that. When was this published?
I think in the 60s.
69.
Yeah, so I think by then he's probably like 60.
Yeah.
He died in 92, man. That's.
Oh wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Well, because he's like 20, like around where we're at right now, or like 19.
Yeah, that's crazy too, man. Like so much life had happened to him before he was like 21. It's just crazy. Like, or even just thinking about like, obviously he had such shitty situations, but just thinking about how experience generally can affect your life so much. Mm-hmm. You know, like you can live the same amount of time but have much more experience by just literally living more interesting experiences. It's weird how that works out. That makes sense?
Kind of. You lost me there at the end a little bit.
It's just like he had so many different turns in his life that resulted in such unique, specific experiences that were different. Like his environment continued to change over and over. Like 2 trips to prison, had different stepfathers in different settings, and I don't know, like all of those different things. Literally, just like as a human, as a brain, like you're just like learning from experience and environment. So like if you're exposed to more, you're just gonna, I don't know, develop more or just
It's
experience.
overwhelming of experiences in that time span of a life, you know. But like you said, like so much shit happened before he was even an adult. So he probably lived he's lived 1,000 lives in, you know, his lifetime. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I guess with that, we can wind it on down.
All right, man. What's our message to the audience, though?
We don't condone violence. We don't condone any of these things. But I guess we didn't really have to say that, right?
Yeah, well, it's a great book. We hope you join us, and hopefully anybody who watched this episode is like, you know what? I'll read that book. If you haven't already, maybe you've read it and you just want to hear some Vatos talking about it. That's good too.
I mean, certainly for me, I came into this like more ignorant than I thought about just like the world of like prostitution and like the dynamics, the psychological dynamics within that world. And again, I'm not even saying that this is representative of most of that sort of thing, but like it's just intense, and I'm glad I'm reading it because it's definitely widening my perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's anybody who wants to widen their perspective and like if you have a bit of an open mind, I do think it's worth the read. And there is like some pretty traumatic stuff that happens, but overall, I think it'll benefit you to have read all this, I think.
Okay, yeah. So I'll express something that I've expressed to you guys before, but I'll say it because I think it's kind of tied to this point. In the same way that I think that this is an interesting thing that we're reading about this pimp, like a random pimp that happened to live, you know, early 20th century, was involved in that life, in that time. It's like a very specific history that, because we're seeing through his lens, gives us like a very interesting slice of history. Like that's what I'm kind of hoping this podcast represents. This is in that, like, we're just digesting other interesting, like, cultural things. So like in this case, a biography, in the other case, like a fictional story. But like we're just consuming as humans who happen to be living in 2020 in, you know, we're in a pandemic still, like that's still kind of ailing this situation. So it's just like at some point, like these episodes will hopefully make for some interesting conversation, or it'll just be like an interesting look through like a very specific lens of 3 random people, you know?
I agree with you, which is why I won't choose Twilight for the next book. I just thought it was a funny idea. And
I'm not opposed to Twilight. I mean, it is what it is. I like my point about us, you know, responding to that. So long as it's authentic, I think it still does that job. But
this has
cool.
been random.
Twilight it is. I'm looking forward to it. What's her name? The author?
Twilight.
She hasn't written anything, right? I feel like she just like, she got a lot of hate for that book too. Like from writers, like there was a lot of like, she's not a real writer sort of thing. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it
was like hate from like writers. It was like a weird thing.
Yeah. I think it's just like elitist type stuff. And I'm sure.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but like it's definitely a thing.
Like, successful and all. But also, like, I'm sure the quality is pretty bad. You know, there's a little bit of truth everywhere.
Dude, when we get to that podcast, guys, I don't know about you, but I love the book. All right, and then I start like going over everything. The arc between Jacob and Bella.
Can you believe how hot this 3 love triangle is?
It's like a triangle.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that'll do it. Should we just stop the recording and then?
Yeah,
let's do it.
After.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Oops.
See you guys.
Damn, Mark. You're still going. I just turned myself off, but okay. Until next time, he's Art. That's Robert. And this guy over here, I'm Marcus.